Welcome to JustStarTrek.com. I'm Angelos, and this is my favourite red shirt.
Paddy, engineering, not security.
So we know he's going to live for the session of this video. So today's video is about our favourite first officers. So we're going to run through them all, and then at the end we'll let you guys know who our favourite first officers are. So we'll do it in chronological order from when the series were released on TV. Spock. What are your thoughts about Spock, Paddy?
Well, I mean, obviously, the standard, live long and prosper. For me, he wasn't even supposed to be the first officer. Well, he was actually in the original series, wasn't he?
Yes.
So he was kept on because of his pointy ears and his perception.
The studio said to Gene Roddenberry, you can either keep the pointy-eared first officer.
Yeah.
Sorry, it wasn't first officer. It was Major, his girlfriend, wife, later on, who was the first officer. So the studio gave him an ultimatum, whether you either keep her, or you get rid of Spock, or you keep Spock and you think. And I think in the book it said that, he kept Spock on, and he married Major. I mean, Leonard Nimoy is a good-looking guy, but obviously Major was the one for him. Yeah. So yeah, Spock, he started it all really. He was, and if you watch the two pilots, you can clearly see a very distinct difference between a very overtly loud first officer to contrast against Pike's quiet captain, and then you had William Shatner, this loud, big captain, and then Spock could dial down his performance. So it was very interesting, the contrast.
Yeah, I mean, I think Spock is he is Star Trek in essence. You know, he's been around for so long in Star Trek and so many different series. For me, I just think he set the standard that everyone else has been trying to reach since then.
Yeah, he was a very, very well thought out and played character, and you could tell that Leonard Nimoy really cared for the character. And just incidentally, it's William Shatner's 87th birthday today, so if you're watching, Bill, happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday, Skipper.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Because Nimoy wasn't enthused with Spock all of his life, was he?
Because he wrote, I am Spock, I am not Spock. Yeah. And I think it was partly to do with the way that the studio treated him. Yeah. And I think it was a little bit typecast in that Spock character. So he was a very good actor outside of Star Trek, but people tend to associate him with that. And I think he got a little bit fed up in the late 70s. And then when the film started, he was quite keen to exit the series. Kill me off, kill me off, kill me off. And they did. But then they kept that little hook, and I guess the fans brought him back. And I think he learned to love the fans. And I think he did carry, and he was a great ambassador for Star Trek throughout the rest of his life.
I personally feel that probably some of his best episodes in Star Trek were outside of the original series. With the Romulan thing in The Next Generation. And even, in the rebooted films with Abrams. So I think as a overall first officer, and then obviously later ambassador, he is an iconic character, so he's certainly way up there in my first officer
100%
table.
Brilliant. And I felt that the tribute to him in Star Trek Beyond, with the rollout of the crew together, what an outstanding tribute. When I saw that, I was really happy to see that nod, and to see Bill Shatner again on the screen, even if it is in the picture form. So moving forward then, Paddy, we have The Next Generation, and Will Riker. What do you think of him?
He walked funny. He had this sort of thing, he'd go out with this sort of neck down like this.
Yeah.
He was, and of course it was a complete reversal, whereas in the original series, the captain was going down on the planet. In The Next Generation, the captain was too highly prized an asset to be released, so Riker was doing a lot of the away missions. And of course, we all know that, I feel The Next Generation didn't start off particularly well. The first couple of seasons were pretty average at best. But he grew into the role, and probably when the Borg turned up, we got to see him in his true captain's role, or what he could do when he was in charge. So, he's pretty good. He's up there, but I think, he changed quite a lot. The thing with Spock is you couldn't say that he changed a lot, because he was quite controlled and reserved. Apart from that one episode where he started laughing, and I think in the Mirror Universe he had a bit of a thing too. But no, I feel Riker did a lot, actually, probably more than most first officers. So what do you think?
Well, I thought that I really wanted to see more of him. Not because I fancy him, but because I felt he was a very undeveloped character. I felt that he could have had a lot more, and I felt that it's a shame, really, because I felt the true holy trinity with the original series was McCoy, Spock and Kirk. But we never really had that in The Next Generation. We had Data and Picard towards the end of the series, which to the detriment of the other characters, and I felt it should have been Picard and Riker at the top as his right-hand man, and the two of them would go on and lead the rest of them, and everything else trickled down. So I felt it was a bit wasted, but in the film series, I felt that he was good, a little bit underutilised in Nemesis, but overall I liked him. I just wish we could have seen more of him.
Well, of course, we've seen a lot more of him, but behind the camera,
Yeah.
as a director, and certainly, his directorial appearances have been very good, particularly with the Discovery episode to start off.
Yeah, and I feel that First Contact, Insurrection, very, very good films in my opinion. First Contact, very strong. Insurrection, more of an episodic, but still a good feel. And I just wonder why he wasn't asked to direct Nemesis. I feel the film could have been a lot better and stronger, even if it did have a weak story. But we'll never know, I guess. So moving on then, Paddy, we move to Deep Space Nine, where we have Major Kira and then later on Commander Worf.
Well, so who are we choosing?
Let's go with Kira, because she
Kira.
was...
Yeah. Even though Worf's appeared in more seasons than anyone, hasn't he? Or something?
Yeah, he's gone through them all, isn't he?
Well, I like Kira because she was a bit of a rebel, really. She was almost the opposite of Spock, who was sort of quite controlled, obviously. But she was, and of course her world had been plundered by the Cardassians, so she's got a massive chip on both shoulders, not just one. And I guess she's probably struggling to feel to fit in. Certainly feisty was a word that you would associate with her, particularly in the Mirror universe, where she was particularly feisty. In fact, she was the superintendent, wasn't she,
Yeah.
of DS9.
And looked great in leather.
And looked fantastic in their leather. Terek Nor, better
That's
name than
it,
Deep
yeah.
Space Nine, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yes, I thought she was very good. I think she had a lot more about her than perhaps Riker had or was allowed to do.
But you could say the same for a lot of the characters on Deep Space Nine. They really went into their backstory, perhaps a lot more than The Next Generation, because they had to, basically. It's interesting seeing the Kira at the start of DS9 and then at the end of Season 7, where in the start she had quite harsh hair and harsh makeup, and she was quite a hard character. But she had softened up quite considerably during the course of the series, and they even had her wearing Starfleet uniform at the end, which I thought was very nice.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting character curve, and the Cardassians abducted her and played some tricks on her, and some really strong episodes there. So I felt it was a well-rounded character.
No, I thought she did very well, and I think the whole Deep Space Nine thing was very good, and I think her role in it was very strong. So yeah, a good strong contender.
Voyager. Commander Chakotay.
Well, I'll just go and get my spirit guide, and I'll be right back and tell you what I think. I feel sorry for Chakotay, because I don't think he was really used particularly well. He was, as I think you've said, feeding off scraps. Yeah, so it is. I feel sorry for him. He was, again, he's an outsider. He's come from the Marquee, and they had to integrate everyone in. So he's the bridge essentially between Starfleet and the Marquee. So he's having to deal with all the rebels who still want to be rebels in Marquee, and those that, and he can see the only way home is to form together. So I felt he maybe it was a symptom of a struggle to keep both sides together. He never really knew whether it was Starfleet or Marquee.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you feel?
Well, I felt that Robert Beltran, the actor himself, he was very disappointed with how Chakotay panned out in the end. And I agree with you, Paddy. He was just fed scraps during the course of the... Yes, he had his Indian or Native American, depending on who you ask, vision guide and all that kind of airy-fairy stuff. But I felt that he assimilated way too quickly into Starfleet, and there could have been a lot of conflict there, a lot of great drama between Janeway and Chakotay in the first season. Get it over and done with in the first season, fine. But after a couple of episodes, he was it. He's a commander, as you expect, loyal to Janeway. There were a few standout moments. So I'm sure you remember the two-part Equinox episode with Captain Ransom, and Janeway, really going to town on Ransom, perhaps losing her objectivity, and Chakotay reining her back in. So he was always loyal. You can never doubt his loyalty, but he could have done with a lot more fleshing out, similar to Riker. So it's like Riker 2.0.
Yeah, we're into an odd and even situation, aren't we?
Yeah. And now we move on to Enterprise with T'Pol.
Well, again, Vulcan. So, I mean, I've never been able to decontaminate with gel and the same since that episode, which I obviously do on a regular basis. Again, I thought she was good, strong character. It was a very different sort of Star Trek, because obviously they were venturing out into space. The Vulcans had held them back, the Warp 5 engine, and she was sort of essentially put on, Starfleet felt she was put on there to keep eye on them, which I guess was not an unreasonable assumption, but she embraced the Starfleet ideal, didn't she? And perhaps sometimes even against orders from the Vulcan High Command. But I thought she was an interesting character. And so what do you think? What were her good bits? What were her bad bits?
She had a lot of good bits, that's for sure. But she's an interesting character, because it took a while for me to get used to her. She was a very stoic character, very, very Vulcan, much more so than, say, Spock, who was half human. She was pure Vulcan. And over time, the crew got to trust her, and she trusted the crew, even though they were quite unorthodox and humans smell quite distinct, according to the Vulcans. And then she went against her own high command and joined the crew properly when it came to the 9/11-esque Xindi storyline. So she grew on me, but there was nothing really stand out about her. But I could say that about the whole crew there. I felt Enterprise was a little bit flat and tired.
I think... For me, I think Vulcan characters always start off very Vulcan, and then as they, through the episodes and the seasons, they become more human, in a way. It's a bit like Spock dying and Kirk, and they're up against the shield, and he says, he's probably the most human person he's ever come across, a human soul. So
do you think then, Paddy, if Vulcans spend a lot of time with humans, the emotions do kind of rub off on them by proxy?
Well, yes, I think that happens with anyone. If you spend a lot of time with someone, I know from my time in the Royal Navy, you adopt a common language, naval slang, so there, you do sort of come together. Your accent softens, so it's bound to happen. It's human nature, and I suppose it's possibly Vulcan nature as well to fit in, but obviously always behind that sort of
facade.
Really.
Yeah. Moving on, lastly, to our favourite show, which has come out lately, Discovery.
Well, are you talking about the first officer of Discovery?
Yeah. So how many first officers have we had? We've had Saru, we've had Burnham, and God knows how many other. It's like Renter first officer on that ship. So it's quite fluidic, the people changing. But let's stick to Burnham, and then we can have a chat about Saru very quickly. So your thoughts on Burnham?
Well, Burnham really messed up, didn't she? Big time. And paid the price. Whether she'd been a good first officer, I don't know. Certainly she didn't. From the 2 episodes we saw, she didn't start off very well. The whole point about military chain of command is that you might discuss options, but once the leader decides, everyone follows, and she decided not to.
So you don't tend to Vulcan nerve pinch or point a phaser at your captain then, Paddy?
Well, not generally, unless they're under alien influence.
Yeah.
So yeah, she didn't have a good start. So I think it's really, we just have to discount her as a first officer, because we never really got a chance. 2 episodes isn't enough.
Yeah.
Moving on to Saru, as I said in the last episode, I really liked him. I thought he was a very good character. Certainly developed over the season. How anyone can act in those prosthetics to the level that Doug Jones does is incredible. And I know you're a big fan of him, aren't you?
Yeah, massive fan of Doug Jones. He really surprised me.
He follows you on Twitter, doesn't he?
Well, yeah. That was a great compliment, so thank you, Doug, if you're watching. But he started off almost like a Neelix character in Voyager. A little bit cartoony, very cowardly, unsure of himself. And then over the course of the first season, what a change. I mean, you see him the first time he takes the captain's chair in the 3rd episode, I think it was, or I can't remember which one it is now, but you see that look of uncertainty. And then moving forward, he has command. You know, he ran those tests against himself with the computer to see whether he really was first officer material. And then by the final episode, he was, you know, if he became captain, I wouldn't be disappointed. Very, very good. Very good.
Well, it's going to be interesting who is going to be captain, but that's for another time.
Yeah, well, we'll let you know on that one. Who knows who it could be? So those are our thoughts on very quickly, Paddy. Who is your favourite first officer?
Well, my favourite first officer is Spock.
Okay.
An interesting Star Trek Online did a poll recently, which I have the results for.
Okay.
Well, you tell me who yours were.
I have to agree. It has to be Spock for me because he was loyal to his captain. He was a well-rounded character. He was acted very well, and I just feel he embodied Star Trek, the spirit of science, conflict within himself, but still able to resolve it without too much violence.
Well, in my age-old communicator, the best number one was Spock with 43% of the votes.
Okay, and that's according to
that's Star Trek Online.
Star Trek Online and
StarTrek.com. And who do you think was second?
Riker.
Yeah.
Yeah. With how many?
Well, 43% for Spock, 36% for Riker, 8% for Kira, 8% for Chakotay, and 5% for T'Pol.
So that's interesting how Star Trek, peak Star Trek was the original series, Next Generation, and then it kind of dwindled off late 90s, early 2000s, and it kind of follows that thing. So do you think it's linked to how popular the series were because they're more familiar with them?
I don't know. I think Spock was such a great character, and everyone stood a hope in hell, really.
Yeah.
You might as well be cast out into lithium mine trying to take over from Spock. So I think maybe it's audience numbers, maybe it's popularity. I don't know. So, but it'd be interesting in maybe 5 years' time to run that poll again. And
yeah, because Discovery is going to do quite well, I suspect.
And I don't think Spock will ever be knocked off top spot.
No.
So there we are.
Brilliant. Well, you've heard our thoughts on who our favourite first officers are. We'd love to hear what you have to say as well. So please leave your comments below. Please click subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Live long and prosper.